In the southern suburb of Montevideo, there is a neighborhood with narrow streets that meander between old terracotta-roofed houses. Emma Rodriguez, a 70-year-old woman, resides under these roofs. She has silver hair and kind brown eyes, and she lives in a one-story colonial-style house with thick white stone walls and high ceilings. The courtyard of her house is paved with antique, geometric pattern tiles, and in its center stands a small fountain with an angel figurine that has acquired a noble patina over time. Lush oleander plants grow along the walls, filling the air with their sweet fragrance. In the backyard, Emma has a vegetable garden with tomato and herb plants, and under the shade of an old mango tree, there is a flat stone that has been polished over the years and serves as a relaxing place. In the garage, tools with wooden handles that have darkened from time and moisture hang on hooks. A workbench against the wall is covered in a layer of dust. Sawdust and various nails and screws were stored in metal containers. A garden hose with a brass sprayer snaked between beds of parsley and mint, which was where Emma's favorite companion liked to relax. Emma was Rex, a powerful German shepherd with glossy black fur and piercing amber eyes. There was a special focus and professional alertness in his gaze, habits left over from his time in police special forces. In Emma's room there was an old chest of drawers made of mahogany with brass handles, inherited from her mother. It was lined with family photographs in silver frames, covered with a thin layer of dust. The massive mirror above the chest reflected a small garden outside, where a narrow pathway wound among stones lined with river pebbles. A cuckoo clock brought from Switzerland measured time in the living area, where there was a worn rocking chair with worn upholstery. The story of Emma and her beloved pet began 3 years ago at a city animal shelter. On a rainy October day, a woman arrived to bring old blankets for the dogs and cats. The shelter had a strong smell of bleach and wet wool, and the concrete floor was carefully cleaned, but it still held traces of years' use. The metal cages stretched along both sides of a long corridor where the barking of dozens of dogs could be heard. In the last cage was Rex, huddled in a corner. His ribs could be seen under his matted fur, and gray stress spots were on his muzzle. A shelter employee told an amazing story about Rex. He was one of the finest police dogs in a special unit fighting organized crime. Over his 6-year service, he had participated in hundreds of operations and helped apprehend more than 50 dangerous criminals, as well as discovering large drug shipments. His record included numerous awards and commendations. However, during a particularly dangerous operation, the officer sustained serious injuries while protecting his partner from an armed criminal. As a result, the dog was no longer able to perform full-time duties, and his management decided to retire him from service. The temporary owner, a family member of one of the officers, could not cope with the dog's unique character and professional skills, so they brought him to a shelter, leaving behind only a worn-out service collar and bowl. When Emma, the new owner, first met Rex, he did not whimper or rush towards the bars like other dogs. Instead, he looked at her with a special gaze that only service dogs possess, attentive and penetrating, as if examining her from inside out. His eyes reflected fatigue, dignity, and readiness for the next stage of his life. After signing all the necessary documents, the newly appointed owner took her new pet home. The initial weeks were challenging, as the years of service had taken their toll. However, with patience and love, Emma and Rex began a new chapter together. He regularly inspected the perimeter of the house and checked all corners and crevices, as he would during operations. He had nightmares at night, likely memories of the last mission. He would suddenly awaken with a low growl, ready for action. Emma patiently introduced him to a peaceful lifestyle, feeding him by hand. She spoke to him for extended periods, scratching behind his ears, where a small scar was visible, a trace from an earlier injury. Gradually, the dog started to relax, although his professional habits persisted. He slept on a worn green mat by the front door, choosing this position to monitor 3 rooms at once, exactly as they were taught in police training. There was always fresh water in his stainless steel bowl, which Emma replaced 3 times daily. Next to the bowl was an old toy, an orange rubber ball, resembling training shells from his past. Every morning started with their customary walk. Rex, who was patrolling the territory, perceived it as his duty. At exactly 7 o'clock, precision remained in his blood. He gently pushed the bedroom door with his nose, reminding the owner of the time for breakfast. After a light meal, they went outside. Rex meticulously examined every bush and suspicious object, expertly sniffing at footprints on the sidewalk. Their route took them past the darkened stained glass windows of the old church, where Rex always showed special vigilance, as if he were a professional. He passed a group of stray cats, potential witnesses, out of old habit, and every morning they would visit Señor Garcia's bakery on the corner. The bakery had high windows shaded by striped awnings, and Rex always stopped a few meters before the entrance to assess the situation professionally. This was a habit left over from his days inspecting suspicious premises. Potatoes, basil, and rosemary stood on the windowsills. The air was filled with a spicy scent, which, however, did not prevent his well-trained nose from picking up the smallest details of his surroundings. The antique scales on the counter shone with polished copper, and the glass cabinets were fogged up due to the heat from freshly baked bread. On one spring day, disturbing events began, when the air was filled with the fragrance of blooming orange trees. Rex immediately switched to official search mode, as his police training had taught him to react to threats that were invisible to ordinary people. He was constantly on the lookout, sniffing for any signs of danger. His powerful muscles were tense as a bowstring. Later, near the bakery, Emma noticed two suspicious strangers. Rex immediately identified them as potential threats, due to his experience working with criminals. Marco Estevez, a tall and slim man with a scar on his face from a prison fight, wore a worn leather jacket and heavy army boots, size 44. Rex noticed his distinctive gait, which was characteristic of a former prisoner, and a peculiar manner of constantly looking around, typical behavior of a repeat offender. The second stranger, Tony Gutierrez, was a stocky and burly man who limped on his right leg and constantly twirled a gold-plated lighter in his fingers. The snake tattoo on his neck, inked in green and black, with red eyes, was a common sight during raids on brothels. That day, by evening, heavy clouds had covered the sky and it began to rain. On Emma's kitchen table, there was an unfinished cup of herbal tea with a blue porcelain ornament. The newspaper, open to the weather forecast page, rustled in the evening breeze from the slightly opened window. Emma attempted to read in her favorite chair, but Rex's anxiety, stemming from years of operational experience, transmitted itself to her. Around midnight, Rex's trained ears caught a faint scraping sound at the front door. He recalled from many police operations. The dog instantly assumed a tactical position, in front of the door, utilizing techniques honed over years of service. When the door burst open and Marco and Tony entered the house in masks, he responded in accordance with protocol for the apprehension of armed criminals, despite having spent years in retirement. Police training proved flawless. The first thing the dog did was employ the classic method of neutralization. It grabbed Marco's wrist with a death grip while holding the tire iron using a specialized capture technique. This bite hit the exact pressure point, causing the perpetrator to drop the weapon. Despite the deep gash he received above his left eye during the struggle, the dog did not loosen its grip. This was how it had been trained in the special forces. Blood poured into his face, yet he refused to surrender. Marco attempted to use a sofa cushion as a shield, but the trained jaws of the dog kept him at bay. The dense fabric was quickly torn in the chaos of the struggle. Rex remained in control of the situation, preventing both criminals from gaining a tactical advantage, a skill honed through numerous operations to apprehend groups of offenders. Tony drew a knife, but Rex launched a lightning-fast attack, causing the criminal to stumble back and lose his balance. In the dimly lit room, his eyes gleamed with the same professional intensity they had during police service. Emma seized the opportunity created by Rex's actions and managed to reach the phone, calling for assistance from her former colleagues. Patrol vehicles arrived with flashing lights. Some officers recognized Emma's heroic defender as their former canine colleague. Marco and Tony were swiftly apprehended while attempting to flee, this time by uniformed officers. The investigative team at the scene worked to gather evidence and follow up on leads. The same protocols that Rex once followed were used. News of the feat of the retired police dog quickly spread through law enforcement circles. Many people in the department remembered him from his time of service, and the award ceremony in the assembly hall of the police station took on a special significance. 60 folding chairs were filled by active and retired officers, many of whom had worked with Rex in the past. On the walls, among photos of other service dogs, his old photo from active service was also displayed. Colonel Ramirez, who had personally presented Rex with awards in the past, was especially proud to attach a medal to his new collar in recognition of his saving a civilian and assisting in detaining dangerous criminals. Many former colleagues came to congratulate the dog, who had proven that even after retirement, a police officer remains a police officer. The operators of local television channels filmed the event. The film not only captured the story of a heroic dog, but also the return to duty of a legend in the police force. Following the ceremony, life resumed its usual rhythm, although the neighbors were now aware that their peace was protected not only by a devoted canine companion, but also by a professional with extensive experience in maintaining law and order. His new medal proudly took its place alongside the police awards Emma had received in the past. His former colleagues presented it to him, and photographs from the award ceremony added to his album of distinguished service. Emma often looked at her loyal friend, reflecting on the remarkable fate that brought together a lonely elderly woman and a retired police dog. Each time, she thanked the opportunity that led her to the animal shelter on that rainy day.